The luminous dais of the Eladari Council Hall hung suspended in the cavernous chamber, casting prismatic reflections across tiered seating, where dozens of species sat in judgment. Three robed figures hovered above, their faces obscured by ceremonial masks that shifted color with each pronounced syllable. "The matter before us concerns the dead world called Terra," announced the central judge, voice reverberating through translation fields. "Evidence suggests resurgent activity, in violation of Interstellar Decree 709b. In the shadowed recesses of New Geneva, 900 meters beneath the ruins of what was once Switzerland." General Reza Archer watched the transmission without emotion. His weathered face, lined by 6 decades of vigilance, remained impassive. The war room around him hummed with subdued tension, screens flickering with encrypted data streams and sensor readings from outposts across the solar system. "General," Lieutenant Carson said quietly, "the Council's verdict is imminent." Archer nodded once, eyes never leaving the feed. "They've already decided. This is theater for the archives." Major Keller, the youngest senior officer present, clenched her jaw. "They speak as if Earth doesn't exist, as if we're already extinct." "That was always their intention," Archer replied, "to forget us so thoroughly that even our memory becomes myth." On screen, the serpentine figure of Soren, Rathari diplomat and council representative, glided forward. His scaled skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns as he addressed the assembly. "The evidence is irrefutable," Soren said, tendon lights pulsing along his neck. "Unauthorized gravitational anomalies near Saturn's rings. Power signatures in abandoned Martian corridors. These disturbances can only be attributed to human resurgence, a species deemed extinct following the Great Forgetting." A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. The Altari contingent erupted in mocking laughter, while Sulvar representatives exchanged cold, sardonic glances. Among the Kasari archivists, expressions of thoughtful concern emerged, but none raised objection. "Therefore," continued Soren, "this council mandates immediate decommissioning of all suspected human defenses and transfer of Earth's orbital assets to Alliance oversight." The central judge's mask flared crimson. "As of this sol cycle, Earth shall be placed under transitional management. The verdict is pronounced." In New Geneva, Major Keller slammed her fist against the console. "Transitional management? They mean occupation, extinction." General Archer remained still, only the slight narrowing of his eyes betraying calculation. He turned to Lieutenant Carson. "Play it!" Carson nodded, fingers dancing across haptic controls. "All channels, sir?" "All of them." In that moment, every transmission frequency across Alliance space, civilian and military, encrypted and open, was hijacked. Screens from the Eladari Council Hall to the furthest outposts flickered and resolved into ancient footage. Black and white images, stark and unflinching. A human tactical squad infiltrating a snowy outpost, breath clouding in sub-zero temperatures as they flanked an alien compound. Orbital bombardment from a cloaked satellite platform, raining precisely targeted destruction on enemy installations. Desert blitz operations with tracked vehicles and drone swarms, overwhelming superior forces through coordinated assault. The footage continued, relentless. The siege of Europa. Soldiers dragging wounded comrades through collapsing corridors as atmosphere vented into space. Arctic ambushes with human flanking formations, executing perfect pincer movements in conditions that would kill most species. Naval engagements where seemingly outmatched Earth vessels deployed countermeasures that rendered enemy targeting systems useless. The final shot, General Archer alone in his dress uniform, medals dulled by time, standing amid ruined corridors of what was once Earth Command. His voice, calm and measured, delivered the only spoken words in the entire broadcast. "You should have checked our archives." Shock rippled through the Eladari Council Hall. Varnari analysts scrambled to access historical databases, only to discover centuries-old tactical data that aligned with no known simulation models. The Ural Confederacy representatives immediately requested top-secret clearance, only to find archives locked or scrambled beyond recovery. Soren's tendon lights flashed rapid patterns of alarm as he conferred with Rathari subordinates. "Isolate the transmission source," he commanded. "Deploy countermeasures." But across the galaxy, disbelief was already turning to dread as gravity sensor anomalies and navigational inconsistencies began to surface. The broadcasts continued, unstoppable, revealing humanity's true history and the systematic conspiracy to erase it. 900 years earlier, Soren had quietly proposed to the Council that humans be classified as a Type 3 volatile species and demanded an archival purge to maintain galactic stability. No objections arose. Solvar representatives sought distraction from their own territorial disputes. Ultari diplomats craved the influence that would come from supporting the motion, and the Elodari feared the unrest that might follow if humanity's true capabilities became widely known. Xenodal agents, shape-shifting spies renowned for their infiltration skills, were deployed to Earth under deep cover. A Xenodal named Errol embedded himself in the East African Technical Union as an engineer. Another posed as a Martian bartender. Others as professors or welders, monitoring human activity while appearing entirely human themselves. Over centuries, human records were systematically erased or relabeled as myth. Deep war logs were reclassified. Inquiries were blocked by multi-level clearance walls. Earth became a whispered legend, a cautionary tale told to frighten diplomatic initiates. Yet a fracture had emerged in this perfect conspiracy. Errol, the Xenodal agent embedded in East Africa, had formed an unexpected bond with human linguist Daniel Croft. For decades they worked side by side, Croft never suspecting his colleague's true nature. When Croft succumbed to neural decay, whispering with his final breath, "Thanks to a man who never existed," something shifted in Errol's loyalties. Several Xenodal spies, led by Errol's example, severed their transmissions to Rathari Command or abandoned their posts entirely, beginning quiet support for the humans they had been sent to monitor. They brought with them hybrid technologies, camouflage systems beyond Alliance understanding, communication protocols immune to standard detection. In the council hall, Soren convened an emergency session, speaking in hushed tones to selected representatives. "This insurrection cannot stand," he insisted. "We must act decisively to prevent galactic panic." A secret Alliance vote was taken. Expose a falsified human violation of the Exo Treaty, justifying immediate military intervention. Altari and Solvar delegates seconded the motion. Ulari representatives remained conspicuously silent. 3 brutal hammer fleets, Vogar, Kolal, and Skriari, were summoned to strike Earth swiftly and without mercy. Humanity, having anticipated this response, activated dormant orbital plasma arrays disguised as weather stations throughout the solar system. Hidden stealth frigates slipped into position around Jupiter and Saturn. Errol and 2 other Xenodal defectors delivered hybrid camouflage technology and combat doctrines to General Archer, who integrated them into Earth's defensive strategy. "We've prepared for this moment for 9 centuries," Archer told his command staff. "Humanity rebuilt in silence while they convinced themselves we were extinct. Today, we remind the galaxy what we really are." The Vogar Vanguard, first to arrive, entered Jupiter's orbit with bold broadcast demands for surrender. 27 organic dreadnoughts and countless parasite swarms filled the space around the gas giant, bristling with weapons designed to annihilate planetary defenses. Earth remained silent. Plasma cannons, concealed beneath the swirling clouds of gas giants for centuries, awakened simultaneously. Superheated matter erupted from a dozen locations, vaporizing Vogar cruisers in seconds. Skriari dreadnoughts, approaching from Saturn's rings, vanished mid-flight as they triggered intersecting gravitational mines that had been disguised as natural debris. Kolol carriers, attempting to deploy fighter squadrons, found themselves shredded by automated asteroid ambushes programmed to target specific engine signatures. Alliance Command, witnessing the decimation of their advance forces, ordered immediate retreat of nearly 300 warships dispatched to subjugate Earth. Only 97 remained operational. The others had been incinerated, immobilized, or reduced to drifting hulks. Rathari commanders, monitoring from safe distance, descended into panic. Soren authorized emergency protocols. Cloaked drones began infiltrating orbital relay nodes throughout the solar system, carrying sabotage viruses designed to obliterate human command and control networks. Dozens of camouflaged drones, scorched to appear as salvage wreckage, slipped into Martian, lunar, and Phobos arrays. They carried Rathari infiltration logic, remote detonating pulse disruptors, and virus clusters engineered to overwhelm human firewalls. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across Earth's networks, communications blackouts cascaded, navigation nodes collapsed, and fallback encryption cycles overrode automatic systems. Saturn relay towers flickered and went dark. Mars outposts lost tether pings to Central Command. Lunar communication meshes fragmented into isolated packets. Human command was forced to operate blind, cut off from its extended defensive network. On Phobos Station Delta II, Lieutenant Mauro Vasquez and his team raced through failing corridors, fighting to reach a buried analog relay that might re-establish contact with Earth Command. Corporal Dawn took point, while Engineer Rajit Patel carried antiquated equipment that hadn't been used in generations. 2 Marines guarded their flanks, and Errol, his Xenodal nature now revealed to those who needed to know, provided expertise on Rathari infiltration techniques. Gravity fluctuated wildly as they moved. Corridors quaked with structural instability. Plasma drones, deployed by Rathari saboteurs, breached overhead hatches and descended upon the team with searing energy weapons. "The analog bay is 2 sections ahead," Patel shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "If we can activate the magnetic repeater, we might be able to bypass the sabotage protocols." A drone burst through a maintenance duct, targeting Vasquez with pinpoint precision. Errol, despite his species' natural caution, threw himself into the line of fire. The drone's plasma discharge caught him squarely in the chest, searing through his adaptive camouflage and revealing glimpses of his true Xenodal form beneath. "Errol!" Vasquez dragged the wounded infiltrator to safety beneath a crumbling conduit. "Why did you do that?" Errol's features flickered between human and Xenodal as his system struggled to maintain cohesion. "Because," he managed through pain, "this is my home too now." Patel reached the analog bay, hands trembling as he rerouted power to an ancient magnetic coil buried deep within Phobos's core. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits. Warning lights flashed critical failure imminent. With a final connection, the analog pulse ignited, reactivating a forgotten magnetic repeater that had lain dormant for centuries. Drones within a 2-kilometer radius short-circuited instantly, their sophisticated sabotage protocols useless against technology so old it predated their programming. Other Xenodal agents across Saturn and Europa sensed the analog signature and initiated their own sabotage in support of humanity. Decommissioned mining drones accidentally exploded, delivering reversed polarity bursts that disrupted Rathari control signals. Satellite hubs on Venus and Europa pinged awake, reconnecting to the emergency analog network. Relay arrays across the solar system reignited one by one, bypassing digital sabotage through technology the Alliance had deemed obsolete generations ago. Beyond Neptune, in the cold void where even Alliance long-range scans rarely penetrated, a phenomenon began that would alter the balance of galactic power forever. The human dreadnought fleet, over 10,000 black hull warships coated in refractive mesh, began to decloak in concentric spheres. This was Gravemind, Earth's ultimate contingency, built in absolute secrecy over centuries, while humanity was presumed extinct. Gravitational sensor anomalies rippled outward from Neptune. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. Soren's Rathari command fleet, drifting in disarray after the failed assault, detected low-energy resonance pulses emanating from what should have been empty space. 8 long-range probes, sent to investigate beyond Neptune, either vanished completely or returned only distorted shadow images. "They're constructing a gravitational trap," realized Ulath Ven, Soren's tactical advisor, tendon lights pulsing with dread. "The anomalies are focused inward." Before he could complete the analysis, the true nature of humanity's strategy became terrifyingly clear. The 10,000 ships of Gravemind powered up synchronously, creating an energy signature visible across half the galaxy. Saturn's deep well transmitter, co-engineered by human and Xenodal scientists over decades of secret collaboration, emitted a gravity veto pulse that anchored Rathari ships in place, preventing escape. Full drives failed. No warp escape was possible. The Rathari command fleet found itself completely encircled, with no vector for retreat. General Archer's voice, transmitted across all frequencies, was calm and measured. "This is General Reza Archer of Earth Command to all Alliance vessels. You are surrounded and unable to escape. Power down weapons and prepare to receive surrender terms." Rathari vessels, crippled and isolated, floated inert in the void. A moment of absolute silence fell across communication channels as the galaxy witnessed the complete reversal of power. The species declared extinct had not only survived, it had mastered the very forces sent to destroy it. In the aftermath of the encirclement, human and Xenodal engineers worked side by side to recover destroyed communication nodes on Luna, Phobos, and Mars. Civilian and military personnel collaborated tirelessly to rescue survivors from compromised orbital platforms, prioritizing medical evacuation regardless of species. Rathari captains, realizing escape was impossible, powered down weapon systems in surrender. Human dreadnought patrols retrieved Alliance survivors from damaged vessels. Rathari ships were tagged for escort rather than destruction, a mercy few expected from a species believed capable only of violence. General Archer's final broadcast addressed not just the defeated Alliance forces, but the galaxy at large. "We were called primitive, obsolete, unstable. We were written out of history, our very existence denied. We listened for 1,000 years while you convinced yourselves we were extinct. Now you remember what we are. Not the monsters of your propaganda, but a people who chose restraint over annihilation, preservation over destruction. We could have struck at any time. Instead, we rebuilt in silence until forced to defend ourselves. Remember this when you judge humanity again." The transmission split to dual footage. On one side, wreckage of Rathari dreadnoughts under human escort, silent and powerless. On the other, human and Xenodal engineers rebuilding the Leonov station above Mars, working alongside medical teams evacuating wounded children from shattered bunkers. Major Cesar Brenner, overseeing reconstruction efforts, stood with Errol among the Leonov ruins. The Xenodal's wounds had been treated, though he still moved with careful deliberation. They watched as the first repaired section of the station regained atmosphere, allowing civilians to return. "We should have revealed ourselves sooner," Brenner said. "Prevented this destruction." Errol shook his head. "The Alliance wasn't ready to accept your existence. Some still aren't. This was the only way. They had to see your strength and your mercy in the same moment." They clasped hands, no military salute needed between them. One war had ended. A new era of coexistence had begun. Across galactic centers, species filed after-action reports that would reshape interstellar politics for generations. Varnari archivists created a new, first-class historical entry for Earth's resurgence, revising centuries of deliberate misinformation. Solvar delegates, canceled scheduled diplomatic summits to reassess policy toward humanity. Altari representatives, renowned for their arrogance, broadcast a rare public apology. We misjudged. Earth endures. On Luna Prime, in a restored training field beneath transparent domes, children played. One human, one Xenodal hybrid, oblivious to the momentous changes their elders had witnessed. Elderly technicians erected a plaque bearing the fractured eye sigil. Once a mark of Alliance surveillance over humanity, now reclaimed as a symbol of solidarity and truth. The final transmissions that day included an invitation card displayed across reconstructed networks. Stories from Earth's resistance, it announced, beginning transmission cycle 37. The tale of how humanity reclaimed its place in galactic memory was only beginning to be told. 912 days after the Battle of Gravemind, as historians now called it. Errol stood on the observation deck of New Geneva. The underground command center had been partially moved to the surface, a physical manifestation of humanity's emergence from hiding. Through reinforced windows, he could see the first new city rising from ruins that had stood empty for nearly a millennium. General Archer, officially retired, but still consulted on all matters of significance, joined him at the viewport. The Kasari delegation arrives tomorrow, he said. They're bringing archivists to begin the full restoration of human historical records. Will you tell them everything? Errol asked. Archer considered the question. Not everything. Some secrets remain necessary, even in peace. Errol nodded understanding. The second Gravemind fleet. And the temporal anchors, Archer added quietly. Some technologies should remain theoretical, even to allies. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, transport vessels moved in carefully coordinated patterns, ferrying supplies and personnel between reconstructed outposts. Mars gleamed with the lights of reactivated settlements. Europa's subsurface colonies had resumed ice mining operations. The solar system pulsed with renewed activity after centuries of enforced dormancy. Lieutenant Vasquez, promoted to commander following the Phobos station action, approached with a data tablet. Latest reports from the diplomatic corps, sir, he said, handing it to Archer. The Xenodal Collective has formally recognized Earth's sovereignty. 7 other species have followed suit. And the Rathari? Archer asked. Still in isolation. Their request for cessation of surveillance has been denied. Archer nodded approval. Maintain the current security protocols. Trust will come with time, but verification remains essential. As Vasquez departed, Errol turned back to the window. I spent 300 years reporting on humans, believing I understood your species. I was wrong. How so? Archer asked. I cataloged your capacity for violence, your technological ingenuity, your adaptability, but I failed to recognize your most defining characteristic. Which is? Errol gestured toward the rising city, where humans and aliens work together on construction projects. Your ability to forgive without forgetting, to move forward without abandoning vigilance. He paused. My people have much to learn from yours. Archer's weathered face showed the ghost of a smile. As we have from yours. That's the foundation of true alliance, mutual recognition of strength and weakness. In orbit above Earth, the Eladari Council vessel. Righteous judgment maintained position, its complement of observers, documenting humanity's reemergence into galactic affairs. The ship represented the Council's first official acknowledgement of Earth's existence in 9 centuries, a diplomatic necessity following the Battle of Gravemind, not a gesture of goodwill. Aboard the vessel, Soren remained in a secure diplomatic suite that served as both accommodation and prison. The Rathari diplomat's influence had collapsed with the failure of his campaign against Earth, his carefully cultivated political alliances dissolving overnight. Yet he maintained the serene demeanor expected of his species, even in defeat. When the door to his suite opened, admitting Errol, Soren showed no surprise. The defector returns, he said, tendon lights pulsing with muted colors. "Have you come to gloat over your victory?" "I've come to understand," Errol replied, taking a seat opposite his former superior. 900 years of systematic erasure, countless resources devoted to maintaining the fiction of humanity's extinction. Why? Soren's vertical pupils contracted slightly. "You know why. You lived among them. You saw what they are capable of. I saw a species rebuilding from devastation, preserving knowledge, creating art and music even while hiding their very existence." "You saw the surface," Soren countered, "not the underlying pattern. Humans advance too quickly, adapt too readily. Give them a problem. They solve it, then weaponize the solution. The Alliance requires stability to function. Humanity introduces chaos by its very nature." Errol considered this. "You feared them." "Fear is a xenodal concept," Soren dismissed. "Rathari practice prudence. The ecological stability of a galactic community requires careful management of disruptive elements. And yet here we are. Your management failed." Soren's tendon lights flickered, with something almost like amusement. "Did it?" For 900 years, humanity remained isolated within its solar system, developing in controlled conditions rather than expanding unchecked across multiple sectors. The Alliance enjoyed unprecedented peace and technological plateau. At the cost of nearly exterminating an entire species, preservation sometimes requires sacrifice. Soren turned to gaze through the viewport at Earth below. "They will change everything now. Watch and see. The careful balance we maintained for millennia will collapse within a generation. New weapons, new expansion, new conflicts." Errol rose to leave. "Or new collaboration, new understanding. You never considered that possibility, because you never truly studied them beyond their capacity for war. And you studied them too closely," Soren replied. "Became contaminated by proximity. Tell me, defector, when did you first realize you had betrayed your purpose?" Errol paused at the door. "When I attended the funeral of Daniel Croft, a human who treated me as friend and equal for 60 years, without ever knowing what I truly was. He died believing in my humanity. I could not continue denying his." As he left the Rathari diplomat to his confinement, Errol reflected on transformation, both personal and galactic. The Alliance would never return to its former state. Earth's re-emergence had shattered too many illusions, exposed too many lies. Something new would emerge from the aftermath of Gravemind, shaped by both human resilience and alien perspective. On Mars, the reconstruction of Olympus City proceeded ahead of schedule. Human engineers incorporating xenodal adaptive materials created structures that could withstand the planet's harsh conditions better than anything built before. General Kerr Brenner, veteran of the Martian frontier, and among the first to accept Errol's true xenodal form without prejudice, oversaw the integration of refugee populations from damaged orbital platforms. "The southeast quadrant is ready for civilian occupation," reported his logistics officer, Lieutenant Wraith. "Environmental systems are stable, and security protocols have been verified by both human and xenodal specialists." Brenner nodded approval. "Begin relocation immediately. Prioritize families with children and medical cases." "Sir," Wraith hesitated. "There's a complication. The Sulver refugees are refusing to be housed in the same sector as humans. They've formally requested separate accommodation." "Request denied," Brenner said firmly. "We don't have resources for segregated housing, and I won't establish that precedent. If they choose to return to Alliance territory, we'll provide transport. Otherwise, they adapt, just as we all must." The lieutenant saluted and departed to deliver the message. Brenner turned back to the holographic display of Olympus City, watching as new sections illuminated to indicate completion. 900 years ago, humans had fought and died on these same plains, defending Mars against the first Alliance incursion. the conflict that had ultimately led to the Great Forgetting. Now they built again, not just for themselves, but for a diverse population that included former enemies. "Poetic, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Engineer Rajat Patel, architect of the Phobos analog relay that had helped turn the tide during the Battle of Gravemind, approached with a slight limp, a permanent reminder of injuries sustained during that desperate mission. "What's that?" Brenner asked. "This city. The last time humans built here, it was a fortress against alien invasion. Now it's designed to house a dozen species under one environmental dome." Brenner smiled slightly. "Evolution, Engineer Patel. Adapt or perish. The oldest law of Mars." Speaking of adaptation," Patel said, "the Varnari archivists have requested access to our historical engineering databases. They're particularly interested in the analog systems that defeated the Rathari sabotage. Granted, with standard security protocols. Share knowledge, not capability." Patel nodded understanding. Humanity had emerged from hiding, but prudence remained essential. They would share technology and expertise, but certain critical systems, particularly those with military applications, would remain carefully guarded. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out as humanity cautiously reintegrated with galactic society. On Europa, deep ice miners worked alongside Hezari crystallographers, combining human extraction techniques with alien analysis to improve efficiency. In the asteroid belt, joint human Kasari research outposts studied gravitational anomalies created during the Battle of Gravemind, seeking to understand the fundamental physics behind Earth's decisive victory. Lieutenant Carson, still serving as General Archer's aide despite numerous promotion offers, coordinated the dissemination of authorized historical records to Alliance representatives. The process required delicate balance, revealing enough to establish humanity's legitimate place in galactic history without exposing still classified technologies or defense capabilities. The Ural delegation has requested specific tactical data from the pre-forgetting era, Carson reported during the daily briefing in New Geneva, particularly the Arctic campaign and the siege of Europa. Archer considered this. Provide the overview documents but withhold the technical appendices. They're fishing for weapon specifications, not historical context. Major Keller, whose initial outrage at the Alliance verdict had given way to grudging diplomatic participation, added, "The Altari representative has proposed a cultural exchange program. Scientists, artists, educators, civilian personnel only." "Interesting," Archer mused. "The Altari were among the strongest supporters of our erasure from historical record. Now, they seek to study us directly." "Should I decline?" Keller asked. "No. Approve the exchange, but implement full counterintelligence protocols. Every cultural delegation will include intelligence gatherers. We'll learn from them while they learn from us." The meeting continued, addressing dozens of similar requests from species across the Alliance. Humanity's abrupt reappearance had triggered a diplomatic flood, some genuine, others thinly veiled attempts to assess Earth's true capabilities. Archer navigated these waters with the same patient strategy that had preserved human existence through centuries of enforced obscurity. In the damaged but functioning observatory atop Olympus Mons, Errol stood beside a young human astrophysicist named Maya Liang. Together, they tracked the movement of ships throughout the solar system, the constant flow of reconstruction vessels, diplomatic shuttles, and security patrols that defined the post-Gravemind era. There, Maya pointed to a distinctive energy signature on the long-range scanner. "Another Kasari research vessel entering Saturn's orbit. That's the third this month." Errol adjusted the scanner's parameters, enhancing the image. "They're cataloging gravitational disruption patterns from the battle, trying to understand how the veto pulse operated." "Will they succeed?" "Partially," Errol said. "They'll identify the basic principles, but not the quantum entanglement aspects that made it truly effective. That knowledge remains unique to our collaboration." Maya glanced at him curiously. Our? You still think of yourself as human sometimes. I lived as human for 3 centuries, Errol replied. Longer than I lived as Xenotl before my assignment. Identity becomes fluid across such time spans. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the communications array. Maya activated the receiver, and a holographic representation of Lieutenant Vasquez appeared. Errol, Vasquez said without preamble. We've intercepted disturbing transmissions from the Rathari homeworld. It appears Soren was not acting alone in orchestrating the attack on Earth. A significant faction within their governing structure supported the campaign and remains hostile to human reintegration. That's hardly surprising, Errol responded. Rathari consensus building is generational. The directive to erase humanity would have required broad support. The immediate concern is more practical, Vasquez continued. Intelligence suggests they may have deployed additional infiltration agents before the Battle of Gravemind. Operatives unknown even to you and the other defectors. Errol's expression darkened. Sleeper agents, possibly even non-Xenotl assets. Mercenaries or coerced operatives from vulnerable species. Exactly. General Archer has authorized enhanced security protocols across all reconstruction zones. He's requested your presence in New Geneva to assist in developing detection methods. I'll depart immediately, Errol confirmed. As the hologram faded, Maya looked troubled. Just when it seemed we were moving toward stability. Peace is never stable, Errol said, gathering his equipment. It requires constant vigilance, especially in its early stages. This is merely the next challenge, not the end of progress. His words echoed a sentiment spreading throughout human and allied populations. The Battle of Gravemind had been decisive, but not final. The conspiracy to erase humanity had run too deep, persisted too long to be completely eradicated in a single confrontation. The path forward would include resistance, setbacks, and continued struggle alongside moments of cooperation and advancement. In the Eladari Council Hall, now reconvened with human representatives present for the first time in 9 centuries, debate raged over the recalibration of galactic history. Varnari archivists presented evidence of systematic historical manipulation, calling for comprehensive review of all records from the pre-forgetting era. The integrity of our collective memory has been compromised, argued Chief Archivist Thelian, multifaceted eyes shifting between spectra as he addressed the council. Not merely regarding Earth, but potentially concerning numerous pivotal events. We cannot trust any historical consensus established during this period of deliberate falsification. Representatives from species implicated in the conspiracy objected strenuously, citing practical stability concerns and contextual relativism in historical interpretation. The debate grew heated, threatening to deadlock the Council's proceedings entirely. Commander Sasha Novak, Earth's first official representative to the restored Council, listened to the arguments with diplomatic patience. When recognized by the central judge, she rose to address the assembly. Earth does not seek retribution for past injustice, she stated clearly. We seek recognition of present reality and collaborative construction of a more honest future. The events that led to the Great Forgetting cannot be undone, but they can serve as foundation for a more transparent galactic community. Her words, broadcast across Alliance space, resonated beyond the Council Hall. On countless worlds, populations that had been raised on propaganda about the mythical threat of Terra now witnessed human diplomacy firsthand, contradicting centuries of indoctrination. In New Geneva, General Archer watched the Council proceedings with Lieutenant Carson and Major Keller. Commander Novak represents us well, he observed. Firm without aggression, conciliatory without weakness. Will it be enough? Keller asked. Centuries of prejudice don't disappear overnight, even after a demonstration like Gravemind. It won't be overnight, Archer agreed, but it's begun. Each truthful exchange builds foundation for the next. Carson monitored incoming data streams, filtering urgent reports from routine updates. Sir, Zenadal intelligence confirms activity at the Rathari military installation on Voral. Ship movements consistent with fleet mobilization. Defensive or offensive posture? Unclear, but trending toward the latter based on equipment transfers and personnel rotation. Archer nodded, unsurprised. Inform Commander Novak discreetly. Advance Gravemind alert status to yellow. No visible deployments yet. Let's not appear provocative while diplomatic channels remain open. The Rathari, having suffered the greatest loss of prestige following the Battle of Gravemind, remained the most likely source of continued resistance to humanity's reemergence. Their culture, built on careful calculation and multi-generational planning, could not easily absorb such catastrophic miscalculation. Some faction would inevitably seek to restore their position through renewed aggression. Errol, arriving at New Geneva after accelerated transit from Mars, brought additional perspective to the emerging threat. Rathari defeat creates mandatory reassessment within their hierarchy, he explained in the secure briefing room. Those who advocated the failed strategy against Earth must be displaced for the species to maintain cultural coherence. The question isn't whether they will act, but how, and against whom. Direct confrontation seems unlikely after Gravemind, Lieutenant Vasquez suggested. They witnessed our defensive capabilities firsthand, which suggests asymmetric approaches. Errol continued. Sabotage, diplomatic isolation, proxy conflicts through manipulated third parties. The Rathari excel at indirect strategy when direct force fails. General Archer absorbed this analysis silently, then turned to the holographic display of the solar system. Points of light represented the current disposition of human and allied forces, a network of defense that had proven effective against direct assault, but remained vulnerable to infiltration. We adapt, he said finally. Enhanced counterintelligence protocols throughout the system, joint human Zenadal security teams at all reconstruction sites, accelerated development of the quantum communication network to replace vulnerable standard channels. Major Keller added. And we continue building. Every completed settlement, every restored outpost, every functional infrastructure project strengthens our position. The Rathari strategy relied on our isolation and perceived weakness. We counter by demonstrating integration and resilience. Across the solar system, the implementation of these directives created a new rhythm of life for human and allied populations. Security measures tightened, but reconstruction accelerated simultaneously. The balance was delicate, maintaining vigilance without succumbing to paranoia, advancing cooperation without naivete. On Phobos, now transformed from battleground to thriving outpost, engineer Rajit Patel supervised the expansion of the analog relay network that had proven so crucial during the Battle of Gravemind. Working alongside both human and Zenadal technicians, he incorporated modern innovations while preserving the fundamental simplicity that had allowed the system to bypass Rathari sabotage. The beauty of this approach, he explained to visiting Kasari observers, lies in its hybridity, neither purely analog nor fully digital, but a synthesis that leverages strengths of both paradigms. The Kasari, crystalline structures housing distributed consciousness, vibrated with intellectual curiosity. Integration of disparate technological frameworks mirrors effective societal cooperation. One observed, function emerging from balanced contrast rather than enforced uniformity. Patel smiled, recognizing the philosophical extension of his engineering principle. Exactly. The Battle of Gravemind wasn't won through superior firepower alone, but through unexpected combination of technologies and perspectives the Alliance had dismissed as obsolete or irrelevant. This lesson echoed beyond military applications, influencing the entire reconstruction effort. Human architects incorporated Zenadal adaptive materials into new settlements. Hezari crystallographers enhanced human communication arrays with resonance amplifiers. Kasari archivists helped restore damaged historical databases using techniques developed for their own distributed memory systems. In orbit above Venus, the research vessel, Leonov II, named for the destroyed station that had become symbol of sacrifice during the Battle of Gravemind, conducted experiments on gravitational manipulation under the joint direction of human physicist Dr. Eleanor Chen and Zenodal specialist Terrell. Their work explored peaceful applications of the same principles that had powered the gravity veto pulse, seeking to develop new propulsion systems and environmental stabilizers. The equations balance perfectly, Dr. Chen noted, reviewing simulation results. Controlled micro-adjustments to local space-time curvature without cascading disruption. Tariel, his form shifting subtly as he maintained the partial camouflage most comfortable for human colleagues, added, "The application potential extends beyond propulsion. Imagine atmospheric retention fields for settlements on low-gravity moons, or stabilization systems for asteroid mining." Their collaboration represented the positive potential of the post-Gravemind era, former adversaries combining knowledge to advance beyond what either could achieve alone. Similar partnerships emerged throughout the solar system, creating technologies, social structures, and cultural expressions that had never existed in isolation. Yet, beneath this visible progress, tension persisted. Rathari diplomatic communique grew increasingly formal and infrequent. Alliance trade delegations reported unusual delays at Rathari customs checkpoints. Military intelligence detected encrypted transmissions between Rathari outposts and certain factions within other Alliance species. In New Geneva, General Archer monitored these developments with the patient vigilance that had preserved humanity through centuries of enforced obscurity. "They're building towards something," he observed during a secure briefing with his senior staff. "Not direct confrontation, they've learned that lesson, but systematic undermining of our reintegration." Lieutenant Carson displayed recent intelligence summaries. Rathari diplomatic missions have increased contact with Solvar and Altari representatives, both species that supported Earth's erasure from historical record. Unofficial meetings, no formal agreements, but patterns suggest coalition building. "Against us specifically, or the changes we represent?" asked Major Keller. "Both," Errol interjected. "Human re-emergence threatens not just Rathari prestige, but the entire power structure that developed during the Great Forgetting. Species that benefited from humanity's absence fear the recalibration of influence that must follow our return." Archer considered this analysis. "Then, we counter with our own coalition. Strengthen ties with the Zenodal, Kasari, and Hezari. Demonstrate that cooperation with humanity offers greater benefits than opposition." The strategy manifested in diplomatic initiatives, technological exchanges, and cultural programs throughout Alliance space. Earth opened its restored universities to students from allied species, sharing knowledge long preserved in secret. Human medical techniques, developed in isolation but often approaching problems from unexpected angles, were exchanged for alien healing practices. Defense technologies were shared selectively with the most trusted partners. In the reconstructed dome of Olympus City on Mars, the first interspecies cultural exchange drew visitors from across the Alliance. Art installations combining human creativity with alien perspectives transformed public spaces. Performances featured collaborative works between species with entirely different sensory experiences. Markets offered goods and services unique to each participant culture. Lieutenant Vasquez, assigned to security oversight for the event, watched the diverse crowds with cautious optimism. "This is what we fought for," he remarked to Errol, who stood beside him at an observation point above the central plaza. "Not just survival, but the chance to build something better than what existed before." Errol nodded agreement. "The Rathari feared this most, not human military capability, but your species' capacity to adapt and integrate, to transform isolation into connection." Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from Vasquez's communication implant. His expression shifted instantly from relaxed to focused. "Security breach at the Northeastern Environmental Control Hub," he reported tersely. "Multiple unauthorized access attempts." "Sabotage?" Errol asked, already moving toward the exit. "Pattern matches Rathari infiltration protocols," Vasquez confirmed. "Response teams en route, but we should—" The rest of his sentence was lost as emergency alarms activated throughout the dome. Environmental indicators flashed red. Atmosphere pressure began to fluctuate. Panicked cries arose from the crowd below as visitors from various species reacted to the sudden threat. "They're targeting life support," Errol realized. "Maximum casualties. Maximum terror." Together, they raced toward the Environmental Control Hub, joining human and xenodal security personnel already converging on the location. The infiltration attempt represented exactly the kind of asymmetric attack they had anticipated, striking not at military targets, but at civilian infrastructure during a high-profile cultural event, aiming to derail humanity's reintegration through fear and chaos. The response, however, demonstrated how far preparation had advanced since the Battle of Gravemind. Joint security teams deployed countermeasures developed specifically for such scenarios. Emergency protocols activated seamlessly, isolating affected systems while maintaining critical functions. Medical teams from multiple species coordinated triage and treatment for those affected by atmospheric fluctuations. What might have been a devastating blow to interspecies cooperation instead became a demonstration of its strength. The attack was contained, casualties minimized, and normal operations restored within hours. More significantly, representatives from every participating species joined in condemning the sabotage attempt rather than retreating into suspicion and isolation. In the aftermath, as investigation confirmed Rathari involvement operating through mercenary proxies, a subtle shift occurred in alliance politics. Species that had remained neutral or ambivalent toward humanity's reemergence now recognized the choice becoming unavoidable: embrace the new reality of human participation in galactic affairs, or align with increasingly desperate attempts to restore an unsustainable past. Aboard the Eladari Council vessel, Righteous Judgment, still maintaining its observational position above Earth, Soren received news of the failed attack with outward calm. His tendon lights pulsed with carefully controlled patterns, betraying no emotion to human guards monitoring his diplomatic confinement. When Errol visited him following the incident, however, the Rathari diplomat abandoned pretense. "You cannot sustain this integration," he stated flatly. "The foundations are built on historical deception and species incompatibility. Yet it progresses despite your efforts," Errol countered. "The attack on Olympus City strengthened cooperation rather than weakening it. Your calculations have failed again." Soren's vertical pupils contracted to narrow slits. One failure means nothing in a generational strategy. The Rathari understand patience beyond xenodal comprehension, let alone human perception. This phase will pass. Equilibrium will return. "A different equilibrium than you envisioned," Errol suggested. "One that includes humanity as participant, rather than myth." "Impossible. Their nature prohibits stable integration. You have lived among them, defector. You know their capacity for violence, their technological acceleration, their disruptive influence. These qualities cannot be contained within existing frameworks." Errol considered this perspective, recognizing the genuine conviction behind Soren's opposition. The Rathari truly believed their actions preserved necessary galactic stability against human chaos, a viewpoint reinforced by centuries of carefully curated historical revision. "Perhaps the framework itself requires evolution," Errol suggested. "Not containment of humanity, but adaptation to include its contributions." Soren's tendon lights flashed dismissal. "Romantic delusion. You have been contaminated by proximity. Defector. Your judgment is compromised." The conversation continued, neither participant yielding ground, yet representing in microcosm the larger conflict reshaping galactic society. Two irreconcilable visions. One, seeking preservation of established order through exclusion. The other, embracing transformation through integration. This philosophical division permeated every aspect of post-Gravemind politics, influencing economic relationships, cultural exchanges, and military alliances throughout alliance space. Species align themselves according to temperament and interest, those valuing stability and hierarchical certainty gravitating toward the Rathari perspective, those embracing innovation and adaptation, finding common cause with humanity. General Archer, reviewing intelligence assessments of these shifting allegiances, recognized both challenge and opportunity. "We're witnessing the emergence of a new galactic equilibrium," he told his command staff during their daily briefing. "Not a return to pre-forgetting conditions, nor continuation of our isolation, but something unprecedented in scope and structure." "Our path forward?" Lieutenant Carson asked. "Patience and vigilance," Archer replied. "Continue reconstruction, strengthen alliances, maintain defensive readiness without provocative demonstration. Let the galaxy adjust to our existence, not as theoretical threat, but as practical partner." Across the solar system, humanity implemented this strategy with the same disciplined patience that had preserved their civilization through centuries of enforced obscurity. New cities rose from ancient ruins. Orbital platforms expanded to accommodate increased traffic and commerce. Defense systems remained active, but unobtrusive, providing security without intimidation. On Luna Prime, in the restored training field beneath transparent domes, children, human and alien, continued to play together, oblivious to the momentous changes their elders navigated. Elderly technicians completed the memorial plaque, bearing the fractured eye sigil, transforming a symbol of surveillance into emblem of hard-won truth. The solar system pulsed with renewed life and purpose. Its human inhabitants, neither extinct myth nor isolated survivors, but active participants in galactic community. Their journey from erasure to emergence had only begun, with challenges and opportunities stretching before them like the star-filled void their ancestors had always yearned to explore. In New Geneva, General Archer stood at the viewport overlooking Earth's surface, watching the first city rise from ruins that had stood empty for nearly a millennium. The sight filled him with complex emotion, pride in humanity's resilience, determination to protect their hard-won place, hope for what they might yet become. "You were right," said Errol, joining him at the window. "They needed to see both our strength and our restraint in the same moment." Archer nodded slowly. "The only path forward, not domination or submission, but coexistence through mutual recognition." Beyond Earth's atmosphere, ships moved in carefully coordinated patterns, ferrying supplies and personnel between reconstructed outposts throughout the solar system. Human voices mingled with alien languages across communication channels, planning collaborative projects and resolving inevitable conflicts through negotiation rather than force. The Battle of Gravemind had demonstrated humanity's capacity for decisive action when threatened with extinction. The peace that followed would test their ability to build, rather than merely survive, to create connections where barriers had stood, to forge understanding from centuries of deliberate misrepresentation. It was a challenge worthy of a species that had endured erasure only to re-emerge stronger, more adaptable, more determined to claim their place among the stars. They had declared war on Earth, never warned about what humanity really was. Now the galaxy would learn not just human capability for resistance, but their capacity for transformation, of themselves and all who chose to join them in building a future neither species could create alone.